Hello, welcome to Chapter 2 of our Best Practices series, Interpersonal Relationships. The quality of your life is the quality of your relationships. So let's look at the definition of relationship. I like that last part of that first definition, the state of being connected. So, who are we connected to and how are we connected? Well, if you look at the last sentence in the definition of interpersonal relationships, we're connected with people with whom we have common ground, where we have something shared in common. So what do we and our boards of directors and our coworkers and service providers and homeowners all have in common? The CID industry. These are our business relationships. This is our network, and we have a relationship with all of them. So let's dig a little deeper. The manager is the hub of all these relationships. We have a direct relationship with the board of directors, with the service providers, with the homeowners and residents, and with Collins Management. So let's look at our relationships with our team. How they're built on respect and support and ultimately trust. So how do we respect our coworkers? We respect their skills and experience. We respect their space. We respect their time. How do we support them? It could be as simple as answering a question or assisting with a project or shouldering a bit of their burden. And ultimately, we need to be trustworthy so that we can trust each other. And this should go without saying, no harassment. It dovetails with ethics. CACM's Code of Ethics says the member shall exhibit professional courtesy to all community association management professionals. We also have relationships with our board of directors. Having a cup of coffee with the board president, for instance, to discuss what's going on in the association is fine. Having a social call might not be fine, especially when there's alcohol involved. Now, I use this exercise. What would another board member or members of the community think if they observed you with another board member out having a drink together or even out having coffee together? Because everything that you do um, does present an appearance of something. So people will develop an opinion of what they see, even if it's an incorrect opinion. And also avoid situations where alcohol is involved. I ran into a board member at the theater when I was with my wife. We went to the theater in San Francisco, and a very friendly board member invited us out for a drink. And I had to politely decline. I was very nice about it. I said I had other plans, but I had to maintain professional distance. And also, I've made a point to never have drunk alcohol where a board member was present or was likely to be present. So I've never been observed drinking by a board member. Also, I once had a board member call me perfectly neutral. Now, you may have opinions and suggestions, but in the end of the day, don't take sides with one director over another, and don't take their decisions personally. Don't take it home with you. You're there to provide information and to provide advice, but ultimately they're there to govern the association and you're there to implement their decisions. So don't take it personally. We also have relationships with owners and residents. Now, if you think about it, for a homeowner, for most homeowners, their home is the single biggest asset that they own. So there's going to be emotions involved. Oftentimes we communicate by phone, and that's not always pleasant. Your job is to always be polite, even if they are not. But you may have to diffuse a situation. In order to diffuse situations, I use active listening. And that's where you listen to what they say, provided you can get a word in edgewise, you acknowledge what they said and repeat it back to them so that they know that you heard them. I heard you say this. Did I get that right? And then you tell them what you intend to do. Even if it's just, I'll get back to you next week on it, or I'll write a violation letter, or I'll talk to maintenance. In that way, oftentimes they calm down, they know they've been heard. That doesn't always work. Sometimes you'll have to figure out a way to gracefully exit a conversation, and that's going to be dependent on your demeanor and the demeanor of the person on the other end of the line. Emails, they can bury you, sometimes overwhelming, but don't let it bury you. Collins Management has policies surrounding the use of Gmail and Boomerang, which are very, very helpful. I've worked in places that did not have such policies, and emails could be overwhelming. You get way too many of them, and they were difficult to organize. So inevitably, something could fall through the cracks. It's your job to float above it all. You can be the calm voice of reason. It might take a little work, but you'll be fine. Now, what would you do if Mrs. Jones came to the door, invited you inside for some cookies? I don't know that there's a wrong answer to this question, but you do have to look at the impression that other people might have of it. If you're entering another person's unit and it's not to look at a leaky sink or something, uh, then people might get the wrong impression. Just be aware of that. What happens if you're assaulted on site, either verbally or physically? I once had a coworker about 16 or 17 years ago who was on site doing a site review, and a homeowner started yelling at him and came up and invaded his personal space. And this former coworker did the exact wrong thing. He hauled off and he hit the guy. That was an example of him not properly diffusing the situation, and he paid a price for that. So think about how you would handle a similar situation. If somebody's yelling at you, how would you get out of the situation? How would you diffuse it? If they're being physical, how would you react? How would you defend yourself? How would you get out of there, get out of the situation? And we also have relationships with service providers. Now, it's our job to be honest and to keep them honest. So employ fair bidding practices. Have everybody bid on the same scope of work or the same specifications. No cheating. Don't let them know the numbers that you were given by their competition. And once they have the job, having a cup of coffee together to discuss the project is fine. But them whining and dining you to get a project, that's not fine. Again, it dovetails with ethics. If you remember loyalty, honesty, integrity, faithfulness, and keeping confidences, you'll be fine. Now, what happens if you're already friends with a board member or a service provider or a homeowner outside of work? You were friends with them before you ever got the job. Should you still socialize? Can you still hang out with them? I am of the opinion that you can, but the friendship relationship should be separate and compartmentalized from the working relationship. Also, remember, people may draw conclusions if they see you in a social situation, so think of the ramification of your actions. You should learn how to retain professional distance if you're friends with a board member. How do you do it? If you're friends with a homeowner or a resident, how do you do that? If you're friends with a service provider, how do you do that? And it might be different for all of us. It's our own individual decisions, because we are all in this together. And remember that chart that I showed you where the manager was the hub of all the relationships? Well, the manager is the hub of all the relationships. And it's also our job to facilitate the relationships between the other stakeholders. We facilitate the relationships between the board of directors and the homeowners, between the board of directors and the service providers, between the homeowners and the service providers, between the homeowners and Collins Management, between everybody in Collins Management. We're the facilitator. Because business, after all, is nothing more than a bunch of human relationships. Thank you so much for your time. I look forward to seeing you in the next session.